Our next two guests have created an on-demand audio program for anybody who has a boss or is a boss. Jim Hessler and Steve Motenko are co-owners of Path Forward Leadership Development and co-authors of a book, Land on Your Feet, Not on Your Face.
Not on your face.
And I did that.
Yay.
That's cool. And you can walk upstairs and
talk
talk
at the same time? That's really good.
You must be a great boss, Jeff. Thanks for having us on this
Absolutely. The Boss Show is the name of your podcast. What is it? What is a podcast and what is the program?
Well, Steve needed something to do after they released him from prison.
Oh.
So we decided to do a podcast.
It was a misdemeanor. It wasn't my fault.
Of course not. And what did you learn during your time?
Well, what I learned was that we could actually, that Jim and I could get together, because he was the only one who'd put up with me, and put together an on-demand radio show, is essentially what a podcast is, available online, available through subscription, gets downloaded to your cell phone, your smartphone, or downloaded to your email, however you want to do it, and allows you to listen in your own time to, in our case, a show on sex. No, in our case, it's not on sex, is it?
Not very often. Occasionally.
It occasionally
it's
is.
been
Okay.
actually about sex.
Yeah,
all the time.
we did a show on sex in the workplace, sexual
I
harassment.
bet it was
in the
highly rated
workplace.
too, wasn't it?
Yes.
Of course, of course. You know, we try to aim at the lowest common denominator. We also did a show on romance in the workplace. But seriously, folks, it's really all about kind of anything involved in the workplace that people are concerned about. Thriving in the workplace, getting along with bosses. If you're a boss, getting along with your employees. Finding ways to make your work life satisfying, productive. There's no end of topics.
There's a lot of great business media out there, including your show, that covers kind of the strategic and the maybe the financial aspects of work, the market forces, things like that.
The really boring things.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
We really wanted to talk about kind of the person-to-person component of the workplace. What dynamics exist between coworkers, boss to employee, employee to boss, things like that. And boy, you know, somebody asked me today, do you ever run out of subjects? No. I mean, we have a list of subjects endlessly. There's so many things to talk about in regard to relationships at work.
So the topic list has included sexual harassment, I know. It has, you said sex, you said romance. What other kinds of things come up?
You know, I mean, I like to think that work is a microcosm of life. I mean, it doesn't matter whether I like to think it, it's true. Work is a microcosm of life. Every issue that shows up in life is an issue that shows up in work. And as Jim said, the topics are endless. Micromanaging is an example of a topic that a lot of people are really concerned about.
Performance reviews was one of our shows.
Job interviews.
How to work through conflict with a coworker.
Conflict with a coworker?
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Actually, it's happened once or twice in the history of the world.
And it's been documented, so you can talk about it.
Right, so we could talk about it.
All right.
We often interview guests. We recently did a show on signs that you're in the wrong job. How do you know that this job is wrong for you? You come home and complain about it to your spouse every night. Does that necessarily mean you're in the wrong job? Might you be in the wrong job, but it's okay for the short term before, while you're gearing up for something else. It's just endless.
What gives you two the rights to talk about these subjects? What's your background?
Nothing. It's my prison background partly, but because, resolving conflict.
Well, it's a great question because we really have very different backgrounds. I'm the business guy.
Okay.
I'm the psychology guy.
Yeah.
That's
and
scary.
I actually don't have a college degree. I was a music major in college, and I really bootstrapped my way through my business career. And so working my way up to executive level in a Fortune 500 company. And obviously I have a lot of, real practical experience, a lot of it from mistakes I made, things I did wrong. And so, I come from this kind of bottom line profit and loss responsibility background that I've had for many, many years. Steve, on the other hand.
And I come from a teaching and coaching background, so I've been an executive coach for 10 years. I was a teacher for almost 20 years before that. I did graduate from college In fact, not just any college,
Harvard.
but Harvard, which of course I like to lord over everyone because I'm desperately insecure, and it helps me feel better than anyone else. So I have a degree from Harvard in psychology, and that helps me, you know, again, feel better than Jim. But really the amazing thing is, and this is, we've been working together for 5 years. He comes from this deep business background. I come from this deep psychological background, coaching background, personal coaching, and then executive coaching. And even though where we come from is very different, we agree on so much about what it takes, not just to thrive in the workplace, but to be a great leader. We agree so much on it that we often think we should disagree more because it would make better radio for the podcast. And we do occasionally disagree on the podcast, and you know, we get into fisticuffs a little bit, not too much. We don't do
Are
too
there
much
pictures?
None that you would have access to, I'm sorry.
All right. One of your recent topics was electing the boss. We're in an election season. People are thinking about candidates casting their vote. Electing your boss.
So I got to say that one thing that Jim excels at is coming up with these kind of out-of-the-box thought experiments, and this was one of them that was really intriguing and got a lot of response from the show.
Yeah, we asked the question, if your boss ran for re-election and all the employees got to vote on whether your boss got to stay as boss,
would she or he win?
would they win the election?
Right, and should they?
And then we went into the discussion of whether that's really something that a boss should be shooting for. And we really had a good discussion about that just between the two of us on the show. And the conclusion that I think we both came to was nothing wrong with wanting to win that election, but run for the election that's going to be held in 2 or 3 years rather than the election that's going to be held next week or next month. Because there are things that a leader has to do that are unpopular. So focusing on immediate kind of acceptance and popularity from your staff might not be a good practice, but earning their respect and trust and support over the long term, yes, absolutely. You want to win that election.
As a leader, you got to be looking, and we're constantly talking about this with our leadership development clients, you've got to be looking at a more distant horizon than your employees are looking at. They're there to do the day-to-day tactical work. You're there to take the bigger picture strategic view. So if, again, as Jim says, if it's a popularity, if you're trying to win a popularity contest, you may not be being a good boss.
I, in the introduction, talked about it being an on-demand audio program. You call it a radio show. Where does the Boss Show originate? How do you create it?
We recorded the show at the Cairo Radio Studios in Seattle.
So it is recorded in a radio studio.
It wouldn't have to be, but
what station and what time does it appear? Where do I find it?
Yeah, you can only find it online. You can only find it on demand, which is really, I mean, I say radio show, it feels like a radio show, it sounds like a radio show, but it's not accessible in real time as a radio show is. In other words, it's not live.
So you can't call in, for example, during the show.
On the other hand,
there was a little humor to your asking the question, I know,
right.
because this is the question we get, especially from people in our age group. What time is the show on? Well, it's a podcast, so it's on whenever you want it to be on.
I'm never late.
Yeah, exactly.
It starts the moment I push the button.
Exactly.
Or click the mouse.
And it's surprising how hard that concept is for people to get used to. A live radio program on at a scheduled time versus on-demand content. And we just love the on-demand content part of it because we did live radio last year and found it far less satisfactory than actually doing this, produced, editable version that's done and given out on demand.
So do you have any evidence that people are downloading it, are listening to it, and where
We have
they?
3 listeners,
Okay.
and they're very,
your mother,
they're
your
rabid
mother.
fans.
Okay.
No, actually, we're really pleased at the growth of our podcast. The numbers in the thousands, and for where we are and only having done 22 shows, we think we're getting a really good response to our programming. It's a subject matter is that everyone can relate to. We have an almost unlimited potential audience for this podcast. It's exciting.
So that takes care of the question that I had prepared. Who would benefit from it? You just said everybody.
Jeff, I think people tend to resign themselves to their work lives, their dissatisfaction in their work life, to the extent that they're dissatisfied in ways that they don't resign themselves to dissatisfaction in other spheres of life. My passion, and I know Jim feels the same way, is that it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be fundamentally dissatisfied with your work life or with your boss just because you get a paycheck for it. So what we're about is helping people to become more satisfied in the 8 or 10 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week that they spend in this activity called work, which is, I say, is really just a microcosm of life. So in that sense, anybody who's interested in making their work life better would be a candidate for listening to the show.
And we try hard to make it practical and not, theoretical. A lot of really what we talk about is sometimes very simple practices that can really change the dynamic of the workplace for people in a very, very positive way. And leadership comes from all levels. So, for example, how we manage our relationship with our boss is hugely important. Most people think it's the boss's job to manage their relationship with their employees. We argue it's just as important as an employee to manage your relationship with your boss. And there's ways to do that. And it can create a tremendous improvement in the working environment for both parties if everyone takes responsibility for the quality of that relationship.
If everybody's willing to work on it.
I think you two are only the second instances that I've had in meeting someone who is the star of a podcast. How does one get that job, and does it pay well? Is this all for fun or what?
Oh my God, it pays so well, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, we're making billions from every...
It's the groupies. We got to talk about the groupies. It's unbelievable. I mean,
we had to beat the crowds away.
I know.
Yeah,
it's to get, that's our life now.
What lies ahead for the Boss Show?
Well, we really want to continue to build the listenership. As Jim says, it's building pretty steeply. We want to continue to do that. We want to continue to produce shows that both entertain and inform. I mean, we really want to be offering value, but in a spirit of that people enjoy listening to. So, I mean, we both thought that either of two tracks will work well for us. The show becomes so successful that it becomes the primary focus of our careers. Again, offering value and entertainment, or the show brings more and more business into our leadership development work, so then again we can go into organizations and help people navigate the complexities of workplace relationships.
Thank you very much, Steve Motenko.
Thanks for having us on, Jeff.
Jim Hessler.
Thanks, Jeff.
The Boss Show. Holly?